I've loaded XPlane, and what I'm going to do now is double check to make sure that the plugin that we put into that folder for program files and then XPlane is working correctly. All I do is go to the toolbar, click on plugins and the plugin admin. Then I'm going to see the enable disable, so I'll click on that. And here we can see that there's a plugin. Ignore the name. All that matters is that we see something there and that it's enabled, so we know that it's working. So we can close that now. What I'll do is click on the Oz folder and run the executable file. Here I've got a window that'll come up. I'll just minimize that. What we care about is the Oz window here. Going back over to XPlane now, what we will find is that we want to have the ILS frequency tuned, which is 110.90, and that's this portion of the nav on the radio stack. And you can use the arrows next to this little knob to adjust the frequency until it's correct. The small arrow corresponds to the decimal part of the frequency, and the larger part corresponds to the larger frequency portion. Next, we're going to click on location and select global airport, and we're going to go to KIXD. It doesn't matter which runway because we're going to move the airplane, but I'll put it to runway 36, which is the runway that we will be landing on. And that will initialize us on the runway now. So the next thing we need to do is move the airplane so that we are to the southeast of the waypoint NAPV. That's this point here. So I will just click on the airplane and I'll drag it over here to NAPV. And we're going to come into NAPV to Anquam, then we'll swing a right turn and we'll go to Jukla, and then we'll come into the runway. So now I'm going to set my altitude to 3,500 feet to begin with. So we'll be slightly above the target altitude of 3,100. I'll set my speed to 110 knots. And I'll change my heading to about 270 degrees. And so all I have to do now is hit the X button to close this window, and that will move the airplane. Now we need to make sure the weather is set correctly, so I will click on Environment and Weather. And I'm going to set half a mile visibility, so here we've got the visibility slider, and that's set to 0.5 statute miles. Precipitation I've got set to severe. I've got turbulence and wind set to probably about 10% right now. And the rate of change is on the middle. The wind speed, what we're going to do is set the winds for the low layer altitude, which is from 3,500 all the way to the surface. We're going to set that to a heading of 090, so that's going to give us a direct crosswind when we come in to land on final, because we're coming in on runway 36. I'll set the wind speed to 7 knots, and we'll make some turbulence. We'll set that turbulence level to 1, and we'll probably put in some wind shear, and we'll put in wind shear at about 5 knots, and then the shear direction, we'll adjust that to let's say 45 degrees. Runway conditions, we will make that wet and apply uniform, and that'll only affect really the braking performance after you get to the runway and touchdown, but that's just to make it a little bit more realistic. And now that we have all of that set, all we have to do is close this and it will apply the weather changes. So now the simulator is paused, but you can see out the window we've got rain and pretty much total IMC conditions. So let's go back to the display window for Oz and set the target bugs before we unpause the simulator. We set the simulator to 3,500 feet, but we want to fly at 3,100. So as a reminder, we'll set our altitude bug by holding down the plus key. And you can see the persistent value is increasing now. And we will see the star layer come into view. And so I'll fine tune it to 3,100. Perfect. The next thing I'll do is adjust the target airspeed using the diamonds, and I'll hold down the period or comma key to increase or decrease the diamond. And so here you can see I'm increasing the target value, and it's also displayed over here on the bottom of the screen. So we're going to have 110 knots. And now I'll use the left and right bracket keys to adjust the target heading layer to our first heading, which is approximately 266 degrees. And we want to make sure that it's displayed in green because it would be in front of our aircraft that we're going to. So now everything is set up, and all we have to do is unpause the simulator and execute the flight.